Some of you'll know me and some of you won't, but the name's Maurice Dobson. You'll see the name above the shop window. I was born June the 7th, 1912. I lived at 96 Station Road in Wombwell. Coal was in my blood. The Dobsons, they came from Jump, and my father, well, he were a miner at Wombwell, Maine. My mother, she were in Nettleton, and they'd been miners in Wombwell for generations. It were a hard life. With 8 children to bring up, my parents struggled to keep us fed and warm. Growing up for me wasn't easy. Could see that really I was different. My father, he was 53 when I was born, a tough Victorian miner, and I think he struggled how to deal with me. I had a well-rounded education. The local primary school, Low Valley. I was a good student, top of the class. One day, coming home from school, a group of bigger lads, well, they set on me, and I went home in tears. My father says to me, "Thou stands up for this end now, or they never will. Just punch him straight in the nose, the biggest one." Well, next day I was going to school, and there he was, with a group of the lads around him. And without saying a word, I walked straight up to him, and wham! Best bit of advice my father ever gave me. When I left school, I did exactly what everybody else did. Went down the pit, Mitchell's name. It was tough and it was dirty, but it brought people together. The abuse that I was used to became different. Oi! Bugger off! More affectionate. All the lads knew who and what I was. Night, Fred. Some of them, they choose to ignore me. But most, they try and get a rise out of me. But I learned how to defend myself. With words, as well as fists. The general strike in 1926 changed everything. The mines struggled to recover, and I found work hard to come by. In the summer of 1929, I got on a train to Sheffield and I signed up for the Army Reserves. First it was the Gordon Highlanders, and then the York and Lancaster Regiment. Everybody were laughing. "What? Maurice in the army?" But I loved it. I loved the training and the adventure, the camaraderie. The talent that I had for getting myself into trouble, I channeled into boxing, and I became a fair fighter. Oh, I'd fight anyone and everyone. The lads even bigger than me I beat. The buggers hated it. When I used to come home from training camp, I used to love going dancing at Wombwell Baths. They used to put this wooden floor across the pool, and there'd be a live band playing all night. I was known as one of the best dancers in the Dearne Valley, and it was proper dancing, none of this modern muck. May I? We'd do the foxtrot, or the tango, or even the cha-cha-cha. Yes, all the girls loved dancing with me. Not just because I was a good dancer, but because they knew that I wasn't after what all the other lads were after. Thanks, love. There'd never be any trouble, except when they used to come from Wath or Mexborough. And they'd come in, and because they didn't know me, they'd look at my painted nails or my makeup, or even my tight trousers. And they'd walk about the room making fun and trying to make people laugh. So I'd say, "Would you like to step outside?" "Well, I won't like to fight in front of ladies." Not that there were many of those about. So we'd go outside. And they think they were going to have it easy, didn't they? Just like in the ring. So I'd pack a few little punches, and then wham! They knew who Maurice Dobson was then, didn't they? Then came war. Right, come on, this way, quick march! July 1940. I enlisted into the Durham Light Infantry, where I was put onto a train and then a boat, not knowing where I was going. After a very long journey, we disembarked at the port of Suez, Egypt. We were told we were there to stop Rommel's advance. The heat was unbelievable, absolutely blistering. We were kept there for hours until they finally took us to our own camp, 60 miles east of Cairo. There, we were issued with mosquito nets and assigned tents, which we pegged over deep trenches, supposedly to help protect us from the air raids. After that, for a week, we did route marches, dug trenches, and practiced with our new Mark IV Enfield rifles. They were much lighter than I'd been used to, but I was still the best shot in the division. Cairo, most beautiful city, nothing like I'd ever seen before. Coloured buildings and decorated mosques. And the locals, they were also friendly. Marhaban, 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 marhaban. It's wonderful to see men being affectionate with each other and walking arm in arm down the street. And they'd kiss. I met so many wonderful friends in Cairo. And that's the first time that I had a proper conversation with Fred. Fred Halliday. He was from Leeds and he was in the same Durham division as I was. Oh, we'd had the odd glance and made the occasional pleasantries, but in Cairo we talked openly for the first time. He was a wonderful man, kind and gentle, and it could be tough when he wanted to be. I loved him from the start. A major turning point in North Africa, and indeed the war, was the Second Battle of El Alamein in 42. It became the first major decisive Allied victory. What was it that Churchill said? Before Alamein, we never had a victory. But after Alamein, we never had a defeat. I was stationed at the southern end of the line, where I was assigned to attack an Italian parachute division. We had much luck. We kept them occupied, and the lads at the other end of the line, well, they managed to have more success. If I close my eyes, I can still see the horrific spectacle and hear the horrendous noise. I awoke about just after midnight and watched and waited for 7 hours, where the air raid swept over the German lines. Then, for 4.5 hours, we started our own bombardment, and over 15,000 shells were dropped that morning. Over 10,000 Italians and Germans were killed at El Alamein. And we lost about half of that. After 4 years of service, I was done for, exhausted and sick. I was discharged on medical grounds in February 1944. A year later, the war was over. When we were demobbed, Fred and I spent several years working in the grand and not so grand hotels in London. We were called domestics, but I still ran the place. Strange place, London, then. I don't know whether it was the post-war effect, but everywhere seemed to be revelling in just being alive. After what we'd seen in Egypt, I just wanted a good old time. Restaurants, nightclubs, parties, cinemas, even public baths. There was something for everyone, and all tastes. In London, I realised that I actually wasn't alone. There were men of all sorts then, and, well, people they called us queens, renters, roughs, Nancy boys, sissies, and much worse. But it was a great time, though. A constant game of want to be noticed by your friends, but not by the old bill, or sharpers as we used to call them. Fred and I immediately threw ourselves into city life. If we weren't working, we was walking the streets of the West End, or seeing and being seen in the bright lights of Piccadilly Circus. City life suited me more than it did Fred. It was then that I found that I could embrace a side of me that I'd tried to keep quietish for a long time. Everything happened in London then. One of the most notorious places that you could go was the Biograph Cinema, just outside Victoria Station. It's better known as the Biogrope. It was a dangerous time though. The sharpers were everywhere, trying to catch you out. Peering under cubicle doors, waiting for some poor unsuspecting bugger to say or do too much. There was a man that I used to know, had an ingenious solution. He was well known at the time, called Soho Sally, and he used to walk about with 2 empty carrier bags. One day I asked him why. So he said he would ask his friend to put his feet into the carrier bags, so that when the sharpers peered under the door, all they could see was 2 feet and 2 carrier bags. Ingenious. The image we created for ourselves, to the smallest detail, were clues to the keen eyes. A beret on the back of your head, wearing a red tie, or putting your overcoat over your shoulders. Unnoticed by some, but unmistakable by others. Those that were called queens at the time were more blatant, with their pomaded hair and powdered faces, plucked eyebrows and lipstick. I was sort of somewhere in between, where I could mix with the roughs when I needed or wanted to. My other passion was theatre, the West End, the lights, the glamour. I used to spend every last penny on the latest show. I was a voracious writer of letters to my favourite actors. The wall of my little room was covered in signed publicity shots, and I tried to recreate those shots in some cheap little studio of Shaftesbury Avenue. Clark Gable, Laurence Olivier, Marlene Dietrich, Fred, the soft bugger, always wanted to move away from London, back to Yorkshire. And after all that I'd talked about Wombwell and Darfield, we made it our dream to come back here in semi-retirement. The big chance came when Mr. Campbell-John's shop here on Vicar Road came up for sale. It was about the same time that the rumours were about that the law was going to be changed and that we wouldn't have to worry about the sharpers or nosy neighbours. That didn't happen, though, till 1967. And Fred, the daft bugger, he was always worried about what people might say or do if I brought him back here. I said to him, the people in Wombwell and Darfield, they know all about me, and I can bloody well give as good as I got. We opened the shop in 1956. It was just a general village grocery shop, but a bloody good one. We served nothing but the best, and we gave our suppliers a hard time. The shop did really well, but it always seemed to do better when I wasn't serving on the counter. I loved getting all the village gossip. I had some really good friends, and they'd tell me everything. I knew all those in the village that didn't like me. I used to love winding them up. And then I hated them children coming in. Couldn't make their mind up what they wanted. Come on, hurry up, I'd shout. I used to love dabbling in antiques, buying and selling, adding to my collection of Adam furniture and Rockingham pottery, Ming, Meissen, even my medieval armouries. They're worth thousands and thousands of pounds. Oi, bugger off! Night, Fred. Fred died in 1988. And that's when my world ended. We've been through so much together. Since that first time in the deserts of North Africa, over 40 years ago. My neighbours were wonderful. They'd come round and help me here in the house and take me out for Sunday lunch. And then we might go to Harrogate or Beverley to see an antique fair. That's when I decided to give everything to the people of Darfield. A museum with my name above the door. Well, we couldn't have you forgetting Maurice Dobson now, could we?